Blessed be everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about the ego and shadow work and our contradictory nature, which makes it really difficult for us to even understand ourselves and sometimes to fully be able to accept and appreciate who we really are. And of course, when we can accept and appreciate who we are, we can bring in more joy and more happiness and more connection into our lives. But before we dive into the topic, I'm Sandra from MysteryWitchSchool.com, author of Crafting Your Wiccan Path. And if you want to know more about Wicca and witchcraft and shadow work, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. If you want a copy of my book, the link is in the description field below this video. And if you want to know where to start your witchcraft practice, but you haven't got a clue, or you're just trying to figure it all out for yourself, have a look at my free video, How to Start Your Witchcraft Practice. The link is in the description field below this video as well. When we're doing any kind of inner work, which hopefully we are if we are on a spiritual path, because it's all about the inner work. It's actually more about what goes on inside ourselves more than what goes on outside of ourselves. And this is what differentiates the spiritual path from just a straight path where you're constantly trying to deal with the world or control the world around you. It's really difficult to try and control the world around you because you're dealing with a lot of influences and a lot of other people trying to control the world around you. So it's much easier to control yourself and work on yourself, because everything that we experience is actually a projection of our own mind, our own perception of things. And everybody has a different perception of what things are. And that's why we can often get into conflicts, because we're only seeing a very small portion of what's actually really there from a vibrational point of view. And the shadow work or the inner work is a way of us being able to understand what we're seeing, how we're seeing it, and why we're seeing it that way. And if we don't like seeing it so much that way, how can we change that? And that's by changing what's going on inside ourselves. It's a journey, honestly, most people, the majority of the population, don't want to take, don't know how to take. And it's a journey that can be very confrontational, because we have to deal with the contradictions within ourselves, because we are contradictory beings. And our ego has a really difficult time trying to make peace with that. The ego wants to be safe, it wants to be perfect in order to be safe, and it doesn't like the contradictions that are in ourselves. So when we're looking at, say, shadow work from the point of view of trying to deal with our own judgment or our own arrogance or our own narcissism or any of these things, or we're seeing it a lot in other people and it's affecting our lives and we need to go in and have a look at these things, you'll find that the ego doesn't want to acknowledge that there are some aspects that it doesn't like in other people that you actually have too. And so you have to be able to go, it's okay. There's a part of me that doesn't like narcissism, that doesn't want to be narcissistic and tries not to be. And then there's a part of me that is. And that the gift in that, as we say when we're working on the inner work, is that you've got the self-love that you can use from that. That gives you the ability to be able to stand firmly in your sense of self so that you don't get manipulated by other people around you. And so that's the gift in the self-love aspect of narcissism, but it's turning that into gold through that alchemical process rather than trying to totally go into the shadow of narcissism, which is very, very unpleasant. But the ego has a difficulty trying to accept the fact that we all have an inner narcissist to some degree. And we have to learn how to work with that inner narcissist in a way that's actually helpful to us and other people, not harmful to us and other people, where we're not trying to be manipulative towards other people. We're just trying to stand in our own self-love and self-acceptance and take that gem out and use that in a way that's helpful to ourselves and other people. And to always be aware of when we may be falling into the shadow side of the narcissist in order to not do that. And that's the whole inner work, is know thyself, know your lights and your light side and your dark side, and know when you're slipping into those aspects of yourself and how to bring the gems back out into the light again. But it's very difficult for the ego to accept that you do have a dark side. And that is where you start to need to do the shadow work, to be able to see the ego for what it is and for what it does. And when you can watch and observe your ego doing things as the witness, as the one watching the ego feel and do its dance, you can start to become more of the observer in your life, and that gives you then more control over your own life and more control over you. Nobody wants to think that they can be arrogant or judgmental or any of these negative things, yet we all have these things in us. And when we don't accept that we do, we will then jump into the shadow of them at various times, expressing them in the shadow, and maybe even still denying that we have these features. If we can step back and just say to the ego, I can see these things, and what if I can see these things and be safe at the same time, and step back, we can then start to get more control over ourselves. So in the work that I do with the shadow work, I've just launched a new course called Wheels of Empowerment. It is shadow work through the chakras. What you do as you work through the lower chakras, which are more ego-oriented, the ego needs to survive at the root chakra. You've got your desires and what you want in your life that's pleasurable in your sacral chakra. Then in your solar plexus, you've got that need to stand in your truth, stand in your power, and to be able to defend yourself as a sovereign being. And then you're moving up then into the higher chakras with your heart chakra, which is the forgiveness and love, and then into speaking your truth in your throat chakra and the creative view, the truly creative view. And moving up, of course, then into the higher chakras of your third eye and your crown, which is really where you start to get into more of focusing on the witness as opposed to the egoic part of you, which is in the lower chakras. But the whole process of doing the shadow work is to be able to see the ego. You get to take a step back and a step out and look at your ego and the antics that it gets up to, the programming of the ego, where it all started, how it started, and to reprogram the ego so that it can work for you rather than working against you. The ego dies when we die. So it's not coming with us when we head off into the summer lands. Okay, it stays, it dies when our body dies. And it's terrified of its own annihilation. That's why it's so rigorous at trying to keep us safe and trying to keep us perfect and trying to keep us popular and trying to please everybody or have everything. It's just trying to survive, and that's its job. That's what it does. But what we learn through the shadow work is that we're not the ego. And we have to separate ourselves from the ego, because the part of us that's the witness, that's the observer, that's watching the ego, is a part of the part that keeps on after the ego dies, after we die. But if we are in our ego and we think that the ego is who we are, because the ego thinks it's who we are, then we're so subject to being pushed around like jellyfish in the ocean. So we begin at the lower three chakras, working with the ego, trying to heal it to a large degree so that it is more functional for us in the positive sense. And then as we work our way up to particularly the higher chakras, we actually then want to step outside of the ego and start to see the ego as something that's different to who we truly are. And this is the magic of shadow work. It's being able to see yourself and watch yourself so that you can really learn who you truly are. And that is what brings you the happiness and the joy in your life, It's what helps keep you more peaceful during difficult times, and it helps keep you away from being manipulated by other egos. It doesn't mean that your life's going to be happy and smooth 100% all the time. You're still going to fall into the ego feelings, the ego emotions of fear and sadness and distress and all of these things. But you'll have a part of yourself that's actually can step aside and watch yourself go through these things. And know that it's not me, it's me. You know, the emotion of fear isn't me. You know, I'm not fear. I'm not scared. My ego is scared, and it feels really uncomfortable. But it's an ego that's scared. The me that's watching the ego being afraid, that's watching the feelings inside the body, particularly usually in the solar plexus area when we experience fear, or even further down into the root chakra, experiencing that fear. That is not something you'll take with you when you go. There's that other part of you that you take with you, the more observing self. So if you can develop the witness and the observing self and watch your ego and learn about how your ego operates, try to make it more positive so that your ego isn't as fearful, that it's not reacting in ways that are harmful to you or causing you too much grief, so that you're healing it at the lower end. But as you work up towards the higher levels of the chakras, you're able to start to take a step away and really ask yourself the questions. Who is it that is feeling these sensations in my body? Who is it that's feeling these emotions, which I'm also experiencing as sensations in my body? And who is it that's thinking these thoughts as I'm watching the sensations in my body and having all of these thoughts that are going on? Because there's actually another part of you that can observe all of this. But we have to learn how to do that, and we have to take the time to step aside and do that. But when we do, it totally changes your life so much for the better. And that is really where the happiness comes from, and the joy comes from in life, and the more control over your life actually comes from. It comes from that inner work, more so than all of the magical knowledge. You could know all the different magical techniques, all of the different types of magic, from sigil magic and candle magic and working with, you know, herbs and talismans and all of these things, which are great things to work because they're good tools and they're good devices to use, but they're not actually going to bring you the happiness that you want. They're just tools. The happiness actually comes from your inner work. So if you are interested in doing inner work with me, Wheels of Empowerment is up and starting. I haven't done a lot of marketing on it yet. I'm just starting to market it. The link is in the description field below this video. It'll just give you more information about it. If you want to sign up to my newsletter and get weekly information from me about what is going on, because at the moment Wheels of Empowerment is actually going at a lower price to the price it will be going at. So you've got, basically it's $100 less than what I'm actually going to be selling it for after April. So if you want to get in now while it's $100 less than the price I'm going to be normally selling it at, then do get at it before the 30th of April. So if you go to the link in the description field, it'll give you a whole outline of what the course is all about. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com. Blessed be.